Karl Popper is wrong. The philosophy of science. Karl Popper is generally regarded as one of the greatest philosophers of science in the 20th century. This is why it's so important to understand why he's wrong. Popper taught the philosophy of science at the London School of Economics. This makes sense. The main thing that Karl Popper's ideas on the philosophy of science is best known for is falsifiability. Popper argued that the criteria for scientific status of a theory is its falsifiability or refutability, rather than its verifiability. The theory is considered scientific if it makes testable predictions that could be proven false. Two other key points to understand about Popper is the idea of fallibilism, which is the philosophical position that all knowledge is fallible and subject to revision. It holds no claim that knowledge can be absolutely certain or proven true beyond all doubt. Scientific theories are never conclusively proven, but can be provisionally accepted until they are falsified or replaced by better theories, according to Popper. A related concept is verisimilitude, or truthfulness, which refers to the degree to which a theory or a statement approximates the truth. In other words, it's his test for what is the most truthful theory. It provides a way to compare the relative merits of competing theories. I don't know how it does this, but supposedly it does this. I think it's important to understand that Popper was a Marxist as a teenager and that his graduate work was in experimental psychology, not in a hard science. In fact, I would say not in a science at all. Yes, I'm saying psychology is not a science. Then he ends up teaching at the London School of Economics. Once again, not a hard science. In fact, there's a question about half of economics or more is not science at all. It's just propaganda. Not surprisingly, Popper was a fan of David Hume, and like Hume, he rejected inductive logic. I don't know how we end up with broad concepts without inductive logic, but he rejected the whole concept of inductive logic. He was also a fan of Immanuel Kant. He argues that statements of observation have a causal relationship to experience. They are neither determined or justified by. This is insanity. You can't have deductive logic without inductive logic. This is just complete nonsense. What do you draw general principles from if you don't draw them from experience and sensations? It's impossible to have one without the other, which is why I did a whole video on inductive and deductive logic. Popper's idea of falsifiability inherently implies epistemological skepticism. It shows that he doesn't understand how scientific theories work, which is no surprise since he comes from an experimental psychology and an economics background. Why we let this person be the so-called expert in the philosophy of science is beyond me. Not surprisingly, Popper provides no empirical evidence to show why his ideas are better or why we should reject Bacon's ideas. Francis Bacon showed overwhelming empirical evidence of the efficacy of his inductive method, which I talked about in my video Induction and Deductive Logic. Despite pushing empirical falsifiability, Popper provides no evidence, which just proves he's a fraud. Two other problems I should mention about Popper's ideas on the philosophy of science is that they were based on the idea of what I'd call perfect knowledge. That if you don't know exactly everything down to the 10th decimal place, then your ideas are not true. This shows that he doesn't understand that all knowledge is contextual. An example of this is that if you're building a house, you don't need to know that the earth is a spheroid. It's fine for you to treat the earth as flat. It does not show a lack of knowledge. It shows the context of knowledge. Another point is that he postulates that any scientific theory can be proven wrong by just one experiment. This shows a complete lack of understanding of the cumulative nature of scientific knowledge. Any real science keeps building on facts and incorporates them into their theories. If an experiment or observation falls outside of a scientific theory, it doesn't invalidate the whole scientific theory. It may show that the experiment is outside of the context of what is known. It may be that the experiment is wrong. It may just point out a limitation of the scientific theory. For instance, for hundreds and hundreds of years, the basic idea of gravity is that what goes up comes down. In the experience of man, until we were able to launch satellites, this made perfect sense. It was not a lack of knowledge, it was a limit or context of that knowledge. This sort of idiocy is not surprising coming from someone who comes from two pseudosciences, experimental psychology and economics, both of which have a horrible track record, both of which have proven to be complete bullshit by just one experiment. Freedom, political freedom that is built on the idea of reason, and science is considered the pinnacle of reason. So by undermining science, Popper is undermining reason, which is paving the way for totalitarianism, which is why this is such an important topic. Long live freedom, damn it.